Hey guys, so today we're gonna go to variables part 2. So last video was just about variables. As you can see here, it was just what is a variable, some data types, and some stuff about variables. So now we're gonna get into more about them, and also some other very useful things that will pop up throughout your entire programming career. So this video will be a bit longer than the others, so prepare yourself. So we're just gonna get right in, declaring and initializing. So every variable needs a data type. We discussed this in the previous video, an identifier, which we'll discuss now, and a value. So an identifier is like a name for your variable. Essentially, you can name your variable whatever you want, like to mark it and know what it is. But this name should be relevant to what you're talking about. So if you're talking about, I don't know, if your variable is like a counter for how many people are at the mall on one given day, okay, it has to be something relevant. So if your variable is like how many people are at the mall today, it's an integer variable, something like that. You can't name it how many donuts are in your house, right? Like you have to name it something like relevant. So for example, you would probably name that example variable num people in mall. So if your variable is like referencing something specific, you need to give it a relevant name. For counter variables, people usually use placeholder names like I or J. They don't affect it that much, but they don't affect it at all, but they're just there for names. That's what an identifier is. And a value is what the variable holds. So let's look at this. So Java and Python are two different programming languages. We talked about programming languages in the slides. So these have different ways of talking about variables. So in Java, you need to have the data type when you write out your variable. For example, if I want to declare the variable a, the a and b are identifiers, by the way. I'm just gonna underscore them with a green thing. So these are identifiers. These are your data types, which in Java you need. So you have int is short for integer in Java, and string is denoting strings, and then you need, I'll do purple, the value, right? So this is how you do it in Java. This is just an example. But in Python, it's a bit different. You don't need the data type when you do it. You just need the name, the identifier, and a value, which is like this. Also, this should not be here. So what it is in Python, the language essentially, it knows what data type it is based on the value you give it. This means you have to give it a value. However, in Java, you can just do something like int a, and this would still count. This is a variable declaration. By the way, this here is a semicolon. In certain languages, it's used to denote the stop of like a line. You don't need to know that now. It's just a detail. So in Java, you don't have to give it a value, but in Python, you do, because that's how it knows what data type it is. So they work a bit different. Okay, so for the majority of programming concepts, I'm going to use pseudocode. So what is pseudocode? Pseudocode is a useful programming tool that people use to represent code without actually writing it out. So they use just like normal English language to say what's happening in the code. So for example, we go here, it says int a equals 1. This is how you would write in code in Java. This is how you would write in code in Java, declaring the variable a and initializing it with 1. But in pseudocode, you would just write like integer a is 1, string b is high, right? You would just write it in normal English. So it's useful for planning your projects and coding, so that you don't get lost, and it's a very useful tool. Okay, so now we're gonna get into some arithmetic. Alright, so by now you should know about like the general like mathematics stuff. So plus, minus, divide, multiplication, But here's how you do it in programming. So every language, every computer can just naturally do math. Like that's how the language and the computer works. Okay, it's just math, just a bunch of math. So they have these operators built into them. So you have the plus operator, which is just the plus sign on your keyboard and when you write it. So 2 plus 2 is obviously 4. I hope you agree. And then they also have the minus operator. These are operators, by the way, these yellow ones. They're called operators. 2 minus 2, 0. 2 times 2, 4. And then 2 divided by 2 is 1. So as we can see here, times is represented by an asterisk. An asterisk is one of the things that you find on your keyboard. For me, it's Shift 8. It's just right above your 8. It denotes multiplication, and the slash denotes division. But what's this? Let's look at this. You might not know what this operator is. This operator is called modulo. Modulo is super useful, and what it does basically, it's an operator that sees the remainder of a division operation. Okay, so let's just see this. 2 modulo 2. So to solve this, we should look at this. What is 2 divided by 2? That's 1, right? Which means that 2 goes into 2 evenly, right? There's no no remainder to this. Therefore, the remainder is 0. So 2 modulo 2 is 0. So basically what modulo does it finds the remainder of a division problem. So let's try this. 10 divided by, I don't know, 3. So, 10 modulo 3. So 10 modulo 3 is, we should first find 10 divided by 3, which is 3. And with a remainder, right? We don't even worry about it. So 10 divided by 3 is 9 with remainder. It's like something else, 9 point something, I don't know. Anyways, now we have to find the remainder of this. So the remainder of 10 divided by 3 is 1, because 9 and then 10, there's a difference of 1, right? There's 1 left when you divide it evenly. Therefore, 10 modulo 3 is 1, right? You just have to find the remainder. So we're going to talk about the order of operations. So by now you should know it. It's PEMDAS or BEDMAS if you're Judah or someone from the Commonwealth. So you have your PEMDAS, right? We're just going to use PEMDAS. So PEMDAS is parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, right? So where do you put modulo into this? So essentially you just insert it right in the multiplication division spot, right? You have that here, multiplication division mod. That's basically how it is when you do the order operations. You need to know this if you're planning on taking computer science classes, because this kind of questions are asked a lot. So parentheses, you can use parentheses for like all kinds of things in math for programming, and also exponents. So most of the time exponents aren't built into the language. There's a separate way to do that, but you don't need to do that now. Okay, so let's move on to variable arithmetic. So variable arithmetic is literally just using math with variables. So for an example, here's a quick example I created. So integer a is 1. Remember in pseudocode that we discussed earlier, integer a is 1. So let's just write this down. A is equal to 1. So we know what a is. Integer b is 2. So let's write that down. B equals 2. B is 2. So, but we can add the variables. So using the identifiers here, you can add these together. So in code, this would just be a plus b. So we know a is 1, and we know b is 2. And so 1 plus 2 is 3. So a plus b is 3. Basically, you can use identifiers to add and subtract and manipulate these variables. So let's take a look at this. So you have x is 10, so x equals 10. Y equals 5. So what is x divided by y? So we know that x is 10, so we have 10. And we know that y is 5. So 10 divided by 5 is, it's 2. So now let's look at this. Here's some more stuff that you can do with it. So what we have here is integer a is 1. Okay, let's write that down. Oh, sorry. A equals 1. Integer b is 2, so b equals 2. But now, instead of asking what the answer is, we have a new integer variable being created, c. So c is equal to the sum of a and b. So this is represented by c equals a plus b. So to find c, all we have to do is add a and b, which is 1 plus 2 is 3. So integer c is a plus b. It's a plus b, which is 1 plus 2, which is 3. So integer c is 3. Here's some more things we can do with that, which leads into our next topic. So c is c plus b. This is represented as c equals c plus b. So we know that c is equal to 3 from what we found here. So this is not 6. This one is equal to c plus b, because this is an identifier and this is the actual value. It's referring to the actual value. So c becomes 3, and then b, as we know from here, is 2. So this becomes 2. So 3 plus 2 is, is 5. Right, so now c is equal to 5. But before, c was equal to 3. Now c is equal to 5. So you can change the value of a variable by using arithmetic and such. So there's an easier way to do this. There's a shortened way that you can do this kind of equation. That is to use the plus equals, minus equals, times equals, and divide equals. So instead of doing like a equals a plus b, you could just do a plus equals b. So now we're gonna talk about concatenation. So concatenation, you might be wondering, what is that weird word? But it's basically combining strings together. So you might be thinking, so you can't add strings together, right? But you kind of can, but it's not like math, it's just like combining them using the plus sign operator. So you remember this from before, this one over here, the plus sign operator, the plus sign operator, it's just that, but for strings. So if you have the string hello and you have the string yo, you can combine them using the plus operator to just get a single string hello yo, right? But you can't have a string plus an integer or a double. This is even if it's something like, let's say you have a string, the string version of 1, the text version of 1, plus the number version of 1. This is an error. You can't do this because this is a string and this is an int. This is an integer, right? So these aren't the same things. This is a text version, this is a number version, so you can't do this, right? If you were to do 1 plus 1, however, because these are both strings, they concatenate, and this is equal to 1, 1, or I don't know, 11 if you will. But this is also like mathematically incorrect, so you should make sure to use your actual integers when doing integers or doubles when you're doing mathematics. So now we're gonna go over like more concatenation. So let's have the string a is hi. So a is hi. We have that. B is yo. So b is yo. Now a plus b, you concatenate them. This is hi plus yo. You get hi yo, right? You just combine them together to get one string. Now we have the variable c. This has to be a string variable or else this won't work. Equals a plus b. So string C is equal to this value, which is higho. So C is higho, as you can see. So that's how basically concatenation works. It's useful for when you're trying to manipulate strings. We'll move on to double arithmetic soon. I just need to edit. Okay, so we're just gonna finish off with simple floating point numbers arithmetic. So if you remember, floating point numbers are just numbers that have a decimal point within a number somewhere. So you have 1.0, 1.5, right? Easy, it's 2.5, 5.5 minus 2.2 is 3.3, just basic decimal addition and subtraction. But what if we have an integer and a double? So this does work, actually, like an integer and a floating point number. This does work. It just auto casts, we call it, from 5 to 5.0, right? Like it just adds makes it a floating point number. This results in 7.5. Sometimes this auto casting, it like it doesn't really give you the numbers you want, and also using an integer on it with a decimal might not give you the numbers that you want all the time. So that's why you should always try to manually cast your numbers before using them in arithmetic. We'll discuss this topic more later. It's kind of small right now, but we'll discuss it more later. Alright, that was the end of this very long video. I'm sorry, I know it was pretty long. So, just to summarize, today we learned variables, so data types, identifiers, and values for variables. We also learned math with variables and variable concatenation of strings. Also arithmetic operators and order operations, as well as floating point arithmetic. And then other things we learned about string concatenation and pseudocode. So that was a long video. I think it was good though. It might probably be one of the longer videos. So